purposes. It would present another side to the story of Palestine, that rather than the usual violence one sees on screen, there are people who are demanding their rights in a peaceful manner. It would also do much to dispel stereotypes, both of the aggressive stone-throwing Palestinian who seems disinterested in peace, as well as show that there are a lot of Israelis who also support Palestinian rights. Indeed, few people know of the non-violent Israeli peace movement that has always been opposed to the Israeli government's approach to the Palestine issue. Today, too, non-violent protests are taking place on Wall Street to protest against the disastrous impact that financiers have had on the lives of ordinary people, not just in the US, but all over the world, while at the same time continuing to demand government bailouts and rewarding themselves with gargantuan bonuses. The Occupy Wall Street movement started with only a few people and was ignored by most of the media until luminaries such as Professor Cornel West joined them. Predictably enough, once it started to grow, the response from the police has been swift and violent, with 700 people arrested just yesterday. But today, the movement is spreading with other peaceful occupations planned for other cities in the coming weeks. Violence also takes many forms. Similarly, non-violent responses can also take diverse forms. One of the worst forms of violence against women is female genital cutting, a traditional customary practice in many parts of Africa and the Middle East. Meant to control women's sexuality, it causes many forms of health problems in young girls who undergo it, including HIV infection from unclean knives used for the cutting. Changing such a long-held custom, which some believe is required by religion, is not easy, because it often challenges the authority of village heads, religious leaders, and the cutters themselves, who have much social standing because of their jobs. But an NGO in Senegal called Tostan has managed to stop this practice in more than 40 villages, not by confrontational means, but by a process of engaging and educating village and community leaders. Working with religious leaders, both Muslim and Christian, Tostan workers go from village to village to talk to communities about their right to health and how female genital cutting violates that right. So successful has this non-violent response to a violent tradition been that even former cutters have become strong advocates against it, convincing villagers to take public pledges to end the practice. While protecting women's health, it has also helped to empower village women and given them a sense that they too had rights. Indeed, women have often been at the forefront of many peaceful protests, both for their own rights and for society at large. In such diverse places as Saudi Arabia, where women have protested for the right to vote, which they just won, stand for municipal elections, and to drive, to Indonesia, where recently women protested against attitudes which blame women for their own rapes, to Iran, Egypt, Bahrain, and Syria, where thousands of women have been a central part of the peaceful protests for change. Which brings us to the recent phenomenon known as the Arab Spring. As imperfect as the Tunisian and Egyptian revolutions have been, they did much to dispel many stereotypes about Arabs and about protests that the world has had until now. For one thing, it was clear that Arabs want the same thing as the rest of the world: freedom, justice, equality, and human rights, and show that none of these demands are exclusive to Westerners. For another, it was also clear in these two countries that it is possible to overthrow a hated government peacefully, especially if there's no interference from outside. Sadly, it is not a lesson some dictatorial governments appreciate, as we can see by the tragic examples of Libya, Syria, and Bahrain. There have also been examples of peaceful protests here in our country. 2 years ago, after some people paraded a cow head to protest against a Hindu temple being moved to their neighborhood, many Malaysians participated in Fast for the Nation, where both Muslims and non-Muslims here and abroad came together for the Imsak meal just before dawn, then fasted all day, and then broke their fast together at dusk. Many of the participants, both Muslim and non-Muslim, said that fasting together made them feel united despite attempts by some quarters to divide us on religious and communal lines. In January 2010, after a church was burnt, about 200 young people answered a call through social media to participate in an event called Tali Tenang, a peaceful rally for unity during a time of heightened tensions. It says a lot that neither of these events were organized by politicians. Instead, they were a mobilization of civil society, mostly young people, to rebel in a peaceful manner against racism and discrimination. I would be remiss if I did not talk about a particular nonviolent protest that was held this year, of which I was a proud participant. Bersih 2.0 is the most recent example where Malaysians from all walks of life and all ages came out to peacefully march for clean and fair elections. The Bersih rally showed up the stark differences between perceptions of peaceful action by the government and by ordinary people. The government and the police seem to believe that no Malaysians can gather to protest anything without resorting to violence, and therefore peace could only be maintained by the cancellation of the rally. Nor could they believe that participants had anything but a political agenda. Yet, if we read the many personal accounts of the Bersih rally written by the ordinary people who participated, it is clear that most of them were moved by a sense that an injustice was being done to them by not allowing them a voice, and that they were determined that the rally would be a peaceful and disciplined one. Faced with tear gas, water cannons and batons, however, the participants behaved in true Gandhian spirit, refusing to retaliate with violence themselves. Whatever the outcome, ordinary Malaysians won a great moral victory that day. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, Gandhi's non-violent form of resistance is alive and well today, perpetuated by all people around the world seeking freedom, justice, or simply the truth. Sadly, as we have seen, governments rarely think in Gandhian terms and instead fall into the trap of matching violence with violence, arming themselves with ever more sophisticated weaponry in anticipation of potential warfare. At the same time, they sometimes make war against their own citizens. Perhaps the only way to change this is to make use of the power that we all have to insist that we be ruled only by those who wage peace at all times. Let us insist that our leaders, whoever they may be, should be those who refuse to bow to the violence and divisiveness that political gamesmanship invariably yields, and instead work for the equal rights of all our citizens. As the Mahatma said, non-violence is a rule of conduct for society if it is to live consistently with human dignity and make progress towards the attainment of peace for which it has been yearning for ages past. If we, governments, communities, and individuals truly want to live in peace, there is no other way to go. Thank you very much.
Well, honored guests and ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure it's just inevitable that we will tend to stray over time, and that may require us to rethink our timings for future lectures like this. Non-violence or violence occurs in all aspects of our daily lives and humanity. And I think that they both deserve another round of applause. I will now hand you over to the Master of Ceremonies for the subsequent part of the program, which are some presentations.
Thank you, Doctor. May I request Tan Sri, Datin Paduka and Doctor to remain on stage, please. On behalf of the High Commission of India and the Gandhi Memorial Trust of Malaysia, I extend our profound gratitude and sincere appreciation to our honorable speakers, Tan Sri Hasmi Agam and Datin Paduka Marina Mahathir, and the chairperson, Dr. Yo Po Hong, for your most insightful, inspirational, and invaluable deliveries. Can we give them another round of applause, please? Thank you. Your Excellency, Mr. Vijay Gokhale and Mr. Radhakrishnan, could you both kindly ascend the stage for the joint presentation of the tokens of appreciation? His Excellency will present on behalf of the Indian High Commission and Mr. Radhakrishnan on behalf of the Gandhi Memorial Trust. I'd like to invite Datin Paduka Marina Mahathir to receive a memento, please. We have another memento, Datin Paduka. I'd now like to invite Tan Sri Hasmi Agam to please receive the memento. I'd now like to invite Dr. Yo to kindly receive the memento. Once again, thank you, Tan Sri, Datin Paduka, Dr. Your Excellency, and Mr. Radhakrishnan. You may now resume your seats. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies. I'd now like to invite Dato Mahadev Shankar and Mr. Radhakrishnan to the stage to present a special award to the Temple of Fine Arts, represented here today by its Vice President, Mr. Thile Raj, whom I would like to also invite to be on stage. Can we have Mr. Radhakrishnan on stage, please? The Temple of Fine Arts, ladies and gentlemen, has played a very significant role as a plinth for Malaysians to develop the artistic potentials that lie in the taproot of our society and to develop the artistic potentials that lie in the taproot of society and to rediscover the cultural, artistic and spiritual wealth of their forefathers and to make it relevant for themselves and for the future generations to come. This Sanctuary of Arts, which was incepted in 1991, has since elevated the gentle arts into a refined product and enshrined them into a temple true to its name. In recognition of the Temple of Fine Arts' distinguished record of public service, on behalf of the Board of Trustees of the Gandhi Memorial Trust of Malaysia, Dato Mahadev Shankar and Mr. Radhakrishnan has just presented the Temple of Fine Arts with a crystal memento and a check for Ringgit Malaysia, 50,000 ringgit. May I request Mr. Thile Raj to resume your seat as Datuk Mahadev Shankar has a special announcement to make.
Of the most exquisite torture that I have experienced, namely the effort that we made to get everything ship-shape for this conference, at a critical juncture and at a very short notice, we had to invoke the aid of the divinities to send us a guardian angel. Our prayers were answered, and she appeared on short or immediate notice to smooth out all our wrinkles and to put this show on an even keel. To her, we owe a very special debt for the brilliant flyers that you all have in your hands this evening, and also to the many finishing touches that she brought with her to put this evening into a class of its own. So it is in order that we should record here our gratitude to her, and we described her as a mystery recipient. I'm sure by now you all know that it's not a mystery at all, and the person that we have in mind is none other than our Master of Ceremonies, Ms. Srikala Nambiar. Srikala, may I invite you to come on the stage to receive a token of our appreciation. Evacuate myself from the stage.